Let's bring in Jonathan Capehart, associate editor of the Washington Post and Pulitzer Prize-winning author. Let me ask you about a couple of things, but big picture first, before we get to the specifics of what the president said. I don't want to say this is Joe Biden unleashed, but this was Joe Biden a little more relaxed, a little more freed of the constraints of being a candidate. Perhaps that's the better way to put it. Because, as Leon Panetta just pointed out, he said it like it was. He answered some tough questions pretty bluntly.
Yes, and this is something I have noticed, and you put your finger on it, Chris. The president being president and not having to be a candidate for re-election is free. He is free to say what he thinks, not that that has been a problem for him in some instances before, but free to say what he thinks and how he feels about things, you know, speaking within the constraints of national security or not wanting to mess up any kind of negotiations that might be happening behind the scenes that we don't know about and can't know about and he won't tell us about. But this is the Joe Biden that I think a lot of people wanted to see when he was a candidate. But I think I can't remember the last time, Chris, President Biden went to the briefing room.
Never.
When the president, I mean, you've covered the White House.
Never.
You know, when the president goes into the briefing room, it's something big. It's rare. And the fact that he was there.
When Barack Obama walked in, you sat up a little straighter. I'll tell you that much when I was there. And they've never seen this. This press corps covering Joe Biden has never seen him walk in unannounced to the press briefing room, make comments and take questions.
Right. Although, as you well know, that American flag, if I remember right, is never there. It only appears when the president is coming out. So that should have been a clue to the folks in the briefing room that the president was going to come in. But the president came into the briefing room to talk about two big things that are important for his administration. The September jobs numbers, which was much better than the analysts expected, and also the tentative agreement to push off the longshoreman strike through into January, past the election, but also past the holiday seasons of late November into December. Any president, whether they're running for a re-election or not, those are two big things that they would want to crow about. And the fact that President Biden decided to crow about it, not just in a press release, not just through his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, but to do it himself, I think is a signal by how good the White House feels, and in particular, how good the president feels about this.
Well, how good they feel. And again, and I mentioned this, that Joe Biden feels he has not gotten the credit that his administration deserves for what they have accomplished. And I noted the way he phrased this settlement to avoid this long-term strike. He said he was glad that they were able to respond to our request to keep the ports open. The tentative deal obviously had threatened a lot of stuff that people depend on, from, as we were saying, bananas to booze to car parts. And Jonathan, you know, he summarized really a lot of things, not just the job numbers, which were much better than expected. He said more jobs, GDP growth high, unemployment low, wages high, interest rates lower, stock market high. He ticked through the whole thing. And I kept thinking, Kamala Harris is in Detroit right now. You could have done a split screen of the two of them, because his arguments in many ways, right, are her arguments. Yes, he believes he's been a better president than maybe he's gotten credit for. But the economic numbers are everything to Kamala Harris.
Right. They're everything to Kamala Harris, to Vice President Harris, but they're everything to him. I mean, this was all the things he ticked off today are things he had been ticking off on the campaign trail. And much to his frustration and the administration's frustration, he wasn't getting credit for it. No credit at all. Not in the polls, people were, you know, the vibe was not there. At every opportunity that we have seen President Biden speak, now that he is no longer a candidate for re-election, he runs through his accomplishments. his administration's accomplishments, and especially when it comes to the economy, the more he talks about it, the more it makes it possible for Vice President Harris, who is running for election as president, gives her the opportunity to also crow about it because she has been there. She was there. She's vice president and was part of the administration that made all of this positive economic news possible.
Okay, don't go anywhere. I want to bring in NBC Business and data correspondent Brian Chung, who also listened to President Biden along with us. We keep talking about these good numbers that came out today, so tell us about them and put them into the big picture for us.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, the numbers that came in this morning, they were well above estimates. And one economist that I was messaging earlier this morning said that this is not anything that looks like a recession. It looks like we've largely avoided one. So if you again rehash the numbers, 254,000 jobs added in the month of September. The expectations were something closer to 150,000. That allowed the unemployment rate to fall to 4.1%. And what's so remarkable about that jobs report as well is that it was broad based. We saw these gains in every industry, essentially. Ranging from leisure and hospitality, so bars and restaurants, to healthcare, to construction as well. So again, what the president is trying to take a victory lap over is, well, this economy that with high inflation that spiked in the summer of 2022, it doesn't appear that we got into the recession that many economists were worried about. And you take a look at the overall inflation rate as well. Again, we came down from about 9% in the summer of 2022 to 2.5% as of the last read in the month of August. And during that time, we haven't experienced a spiking in the unemployment rate, as is usually the case when the Federal Reserve dramatically raises its interest rates. And that's the other fact I want to kind of point out here. The Federal Reserve is also a big factor here. The president didn't really mention that in his remarks just now, but it's the independent central bank that has the job of using its levers, which is borrowing costs, to try to take steam out of the economy when inflation is high, which is exactly what happened. The Federal Reserve also gets a little bit of credit for that as well. But the president understandably wanting to at least do a victory lap for this September jobs report, which another bank, Bank of America, recently described as an A+, if you were trying to put it on a report card. So maybe perhaps the reason why that unprecedented appearance from the president in the briefing room today.
Brian Chung, thank you for that. One more moment, Jonathan, that I want to just bring up. And we're talking about, the president having been released from the constraints of being a candidate. It was when he was asked about Marco Rubio's comments. Marco Rubio said something to the effect that, the job numbers aren't real. And the chuckle, the Joe Biden chuckle, and it kind of reminded me of the split screen that we saw in the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and where he would say something that she thought was obviously ridiculous, and she would just kind of laugh. You could see the laugh, you couldn't hear it, and that's sort of what we saw with Joe Biden. They seem to be taking a very similar strategic approach to some of these things. They're not necessarily going after him and saying, here's a detailed reason why that is preposterous. They just sort of are dismissive of it.
Well, right, because, when it was the vice president on the debate stage, dismissive because what the other guy was saying was a lie. And I think for President Biden, who served in the Senate for 36 years, for him to hear a fellow senator who has been, Senator Marco Rubio is not a newbie. He has been on the Hill for years now, multiple terms. And so for him to say that the jobs numbers coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics are fake, the president hears that, and I think he just looks and chuckles, and basically the thought bubble I see is, can you believe this guy? Can you believe he is saying something that is patently untrue, but also he's saying something that he knows isn't true because of his tenure in the Senate? I'm talking about Senator Marco Rubio. And then the big tell for me is that when the president started saying something, and then he said, never mind, I don't want to go there. That tells you that he is restraining himself from saying what he really wants to say, which might be a couple of expletives.
Yeah, Marco Rubio's been in politics. I think he was in the Florida House like in 2000, so 24 years. He ran for president of the United States. Mm-hmm. He knows how jobs numbers work. Jonathan, don't go anywhere.